The recording starts mid-sentence. That is the first thing Ambassador Soren notices when the archive file opens. Not the content, not the timestamp, not the tactical designation stamped across the header in Dominion red. The recording starts mid-sentence, as though whoever activated the device did so carelessly, or in a hurry, or as though they never expected anyone to watch it at all. The human's voice is already speaking when the audio resolves. Doesn't matter how many of them there are, get the Covenant asterisk moving, now. Then silence. Then, somewhere in the background of that recording, a sound Soren has never heard a human make before. Laughter. Not nervous laughter. Not the thin, desperate kind that Dominion xenopsychologists had cataloged in captured personnel files. The reflexive vocalization of prey animals attempting social bonding under stress. This was something else. Low. Almost appreciative. Like the human on that recording had looked at the single largest naval formation ever assembled in the Orin Corridor, had counted the ships, had understood precisely what those numbers meant. And found it asterisk funny. Soren closes the file. He opens it again. The laugh is still there. He has been studying humans for 11 years. He thought he understood them. He does not yet know how wrong he is. The Dominion fleet had been assembling for 6 weeks before Earth's monitoring networks flagged the gravitational signatures. By the time the data reached anyone with authority to act on it, the formation was already complete. 412 warships arranged in a compression formation around the outer approach lanes of the Sol system, close enough that lunar telescopes could resolve individual hull markings without enhancement. 412 ships. Every government on Earth counted them. Several counted twice. The numbers kept coming out the same. They're not moving, reported Commander Co. Jaiwan from the sensor station aboard EFS Covenant asterisk, and her voice was flat in the particular way that people's voices go flat when the brain is still processing something the mouth has been asked to describe before the processing is finished. They're just sitting there, in formation. That's a siege pattern, said the man standing behind her. Captain Malachize did not move from where he stood at the center of the Covenant *S bridge, his arms crossed, his eyes on the tactical display. He had the kind of stillness that some people mistake for calm and others recognize immediately as something different. Specifically, it's a Veth-class compression siege, designed to collapse inward on a signal. Everything inside the formation radius he stopped, gets compressed. Co. Jaiwan did not ask him to finish the sentence. Fleet Command is requesting our position, she said instead. Tell them we're moving. She turned in her seat. Captain, we are the only ship in range. Fleet is still 14 hours out at emergency burn. Command is asking whether we should hold at. Tell them, Malachize said again, that we're moving. This was the first thing the Dominion observed about the asterisk Covenant that they could not explain. Supreme Commander Threshavali received the sensor report at 3:40 Standard, aboard the fleet carrier asterisk Unbroken Consensus asterisk, and read it with the particular quality of attention she reserved for data she suspected was corrupted. One vessel, human registry, frigate class by dimensional profile, which meant it was smaller than 31 of the support ships currently anchored at the formation's outer edge. It was not accelerating toward the fleet in any tactical configuration she recognized. It was not broadcasting a distress signal. It was not attempting to hail the formation. It was simply coming toward them. Confirmed sensor reading, she asked. 3 independent systems, Commander. 1 vessel, no support craft. No drone complement that we can detect. The sensor officer, a young Veth named Kari Sal, fresh from the academy and still carrying that particular stillness of someone who has not yet learned how many ways data can be wrong, paused. It appears to be accelerating. Threshavali looked at the display, then at the 412 ships surrounding it, then at the display again. Hail them. The channel opened. There was a brief silence on the human end, just long enough to be interesting, and then a voice came through that was neither frightened nor aggressive. It sounded, more than anything else, tired. The specific tiredness of someone who has been awake for a long time and has accepted that they will be awake for longer. "This is Captain Malachize, Earth Federation ship * Covenant. I'm assuming you speak something I can work with." "Yes." Threshavaly's translator rendered the words in 0.4 seconds. She stared at the audio waveform for a moment before responding. "We speak 19 registered interstellar languages. Your translator should be able to find alignment." "Good." A pause. "You're in our space." "We are aware." "Then you know why I'm here." Threshavaly looked at her tactical officers. They looked back. None of them had an answer to what a single frigate captain believed he was going to accomplish, and none of them said so, because none of them wanted to be the one to admit that the question genuinely confused them. "Captain Malachize," she said carefully, "you are one ship." "I know what I am," he said. The channel stayed open for several seconds after that. Then Malachize's voice returned, quieter, with something underneath it that her translator flagged as unclassifiable, not anger, not grief, not threat signaling. The closest match it offered was a word from an extinct Veth dialect that roughly translated as the mood of someone who has already made a decision they cannot take back. "I'm going to need you to listen to me very carefully," he said, "because I'm going to explain something to you, and I'm only going to say it once, and I need you to actually hear it before you do something that neither of us can fix." And then there it was, quiet, low, somewhere in the background of the signal. He laughed. Vale Soren pauses the recording here. He has been studying it for 3 days now, in the post-action archive review that the Dominion High Council ordered after the Orin Corridor incident. He is not a military analyst. He is a xenopsychologist, specifically, the Dominion's leading authority on human behavioral modeling, and the Council summoned him because the military analysts have been looking at this recording for 72 hours, and none of them can explain what they're seeing. "Play it again," he tells the archive system, from the laugh. The laugh plays. He runs it against every human vocalization database the Dominion has compiled over 16 years of contact and conflict. Fear response, aggression precursor, social bonding noise, desperation indicator. None of the profiles match. The acoustic signature falls into a gap in their taxonomy, a category they have a placeholder for but have never actually encountered in a genuine field sample. The placeholder is labeled pre-sacrifice vocalization theoretical. Vale Soren stares at that label for a long time. Then he starts reading the full engagement record from the beginning, because he realizes, with a cold, specific clarity, that he has been analyzing the wrong data. He has been studying what Malachize said. He should have been studying what Malachize did not say. The Covenant crossed the outer formation boundary at 612 standard, moving at a velocity that Dominion tactical systems flagged as non-optimal for either approach or retreat, which was another way of saying it was a speed that made no military sense. Too fast to be cautious. Too slow to close distance effectively. The kind of speed you choose when your goal is not to arrive quickly, but to be seen arriving. Aboard the bridge, CO Jaiwan was doing 3 things simultaneously: monitoring the formation for weapon locks, tracking the Covenant *S structural integrity margins, and watching Malachize. The weapon lock alert appeared at 6:19. Then another at 6:21. Then 4 more in the span of 90 seconds, until the board was showing 37 active targeting solutions from ships distributed throughout the formation. 37 locks, she said. I heard it. Captain, how many of those are forward arc ships? She checked 11. Okay, he hadn't moved. His arms were still crossed. What's our current position relative to formation center? We're inside the inner compression ring. We crossed it 4 minutes ago. She hesitated. Captain, if they fire now, if any significant portion of that formation fires now, we can't. I know that the compression radius at our current position means that even if we went to full emergency burn right now. CO. She stopped. I know, he said again, and his voice had gone to that same quiet place it had been on the hail. Trust me, keep us on course. She wanted to say something. Several things. She turned back to her console instead, because the look on his face was one she had never seen there before, and she had served with Captain Malachize for 6 years, and the fact that she could not name the expression terrified her in a way the 37 weapon locks had not quite managed. The Covenant continued inward. HFY watched the frigate's progress on her tactical display with the particular quality of attention usually reserved for things that do not behave correctly. It was not accelerating. It was not attempting evasive patterns. It had not altered course by even a fraction of a degree since entering the formation. Is it possible, she asked slowly, that their navigation system is malfunctioning? Unlikely, Commander. They corrected for formation drift twice in the last 8 minutes. The adjustments were precise. Then they know where they're going. Yes. Do we know where they're going? Her tactical officer pulled the trajectory projection. It resolved on the display, a clean, straight line extending from the Covenant *S current position through the formation to its geometric center, where the * unbroken consensus sat at anchor. They were coming to her. She sat with that information for a moment, then open a channel. Captain Malachize. HFY's voice carried the tone of someone making a deliberate choice to sound calmer than they are. You are currently inside my formation's compression radius. I would like you to explain your intentions before my weapons officers make a decision I cannot reverse. A pause, then. Yeah, I figured we were about there. Something shifted in the audio, a quiet breath or a movement, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, not harder, more specific. I want to ask you a question, Commander. I'm assuming you're the commander. The ship I'm heading toward is the biggest thing out here and it's positioned at the center, which means either you're in charge or whoever is in charge has terrible security instincts. Despite herself, HFY's secondary heart, the one that regulated stress response, pulsed once hard. Ask. How long, Malachize said, do you think we've known you were coming? She did not answer immediately. The question was wrong. Not wrong in the sense of being unanswerable, wrong in the sense of being a question she had not expected and had not prepared for, and which suddenly made her want to go back and look at every assumption her Fleet Intelligence Division had made over the past 6 weeks. Our approach, she said carefully, was conducted within standard Dominion stealth protocols. Right, his voice was patient, almost gentle, like a teacher who knows their student has just revealed something interesting. I know, and you do those really well, by the way. We didn't flag the gravitational signatures until you were already in full formation, which was, I'm guessing, intentional. Hit us with the complete picture all at once so we don't have time to think. That is correct. We had 11 days, he said. HFY went still. We had 11 days, Malachize said again, between when we detected you and when we decided what to do about it. And I want to be very clear about what happened in those 11 days, Commander, because I think you've made some assumptions about what a species does when it sees 400 ships show up outside its home system, and I need you to understand that whatever you assumed, you're wrong. Her tactical officers were looking at her. She kept her eyes on the audio display, on the waveform of his voice, on the specific quality of steadiness in it. What did you do, she said, in 11 days? We argued, he said, loudly for about 9 of them. A pause. Then we stopped arguing. The full intelligence reconstruction took Dominion analysts another 4 days to piece together, and Vale Soren was present when the lead analyst presented the findings to the High Council. He watched the Council's faces as the data came in. He watched them do what humans would call asterisk recalibrating, that specific expression of an entity that has discovered the model they built in their head does not match the territory. The Covenant had not been a surprise response. In the 11 days between Earth's detection of the Dominion fleet and the Covenant *S departure, the Earth Federation Council had met in continuous session for 68 hours, debated 47 separate response proposals, rejected all of them, debated 9 more, and ultimately arrived at a decision that no Dominion strategic model had included in its projections. Not because the model was incomplete, but because the model had assumed any rational civilization, confronted with overwhelming force at its doorstep, would make a decision oriented around survival. The Earth Federation Council had not made a decision oriented around survival. They had sent one ship. Specifically, they had sent the oldest active service ship in the Federation fleet, a vessel with a service record that, when the Dominion analysts found it, caused 3 of them to independently double-check the database for entry errors. The Covenant had been commissioned 31 years ago. It had participated in 6 separate first contact events, 2 of which had turned hostile. Its hull showed repair signatures from 17 distinct weapon systems across 5 different conflicts. It had been decommissioned twice and returned to service twice. It had never, in 31 years of operation, fired a weapon first. They chose asterisk that ship, HFY had said to her senior staff, reading the intelligence report at 300 the morning after the asterisk Covenant asterisk S arrival. Out of every vessel in their fleet, they chose that one. Why? No one had an answer that satisfied her. Here is what she did not know. The Council had not chosen the asterisk Covenant for its weapons capability, or its structural integrity, or any tactical metric at all. They had chosen it because of its captain, and they had chosen its captain for a reason that, when Vale Soren finally read the relevant Council transcript, made him set down his stylus and spend several minutes simply looking at nothing. The transcript read, Captain Malachize's service history indicates demonstrated capacity for communication under duress, sustained performance under existential threat, and most critically, documented willingness to accept personal risk on behalf of strategic outcomes. The Council acknowledges that the assigned captain will be aware of the survival probability of this mission. The Council further acknowledges that Captain Malachize has been informed of this probability. He accepted the assignment in 11 seconds. 11 seconds. Vale Soren found the audio record of the Council's call with Malachize. He played it. He listened to the 11 seconds. There was no sound in them, no sharp intake of breath, no pause vocalization, none of the acoustic markers associated with fear response in humans under pressure. Just silence. Then Malachize's voice, "What do you need me to do?" The Covenant reached the asterisk unbroken consensus asterisk at 11:47 standard. The 2 vessels were close enough now that visual cameras could resolve hull details, and what the consensus asterisk S camera systems showed the bridge crew was a human ship that, at this proximity, looked less like a warship and more like something that had survived by refusing to stop. The repair signatures were obvious from here. Different metals, different hull plating. Sections that had clearly been added over time, practical and mismatched, like a structure built by people who needed it to work rather than people who needed it to look correct. HFY found herself thinking about that distinction in a way she could not quite dismiss. "They're requesting a docking channel," said her communications officer. She stared at the visual for a moment longer. Granted. The meeting took place in a neutral chamber aboard the consensus asterisk, and HFY attended with 6 of her senior officers and 2 security personnel. Malachize arrived alone. She had expected that to feel like a disadvantage for him. Standing there in the doorway, unarmored, his uniform showing the same quality of sustained practical use as his ship's hull, it did not feel like a disadvantage. "Commander HFY," he said, not a question. "Captain Malachize," She studied him. He was older than the intelligence file suggested, or perhaps just weathered in a way that read older. You've come a long way to have a conversation. I've come a long way to make sure you have all the information you need, he said, sitting down across from her without waiting to be invited. After that, you can make whatever decision you're going to make. Information, she said. What information do you believe I'm missing? He looked at her for a moment with an expression her translator could not classify. Then he reached into his jacket. Her security personnel tensed, and he noticed, and didn't stop, and placed a data chip on the table between them. That, he said, is the complete record of every conversation the Earth Federation Council had in the 11 days between detecting your fleet and sending me here. Every argument, every proposal they rejected, every vote, every dissent. He left his hand near it, not touching it, including the ones about what to do if I didn't make it back. Threshavali looked at the chip, then at him. Why would you give me that? Because I need you to understand something about how humans make decisions, he said, and I can tell you, or I can show you. Showing you is faster, and I don't think we have a lot of time for me to be wrong about what I'm about to say. She picked up the chip. What the chip contained took 4 hours to review, and in those 4 hours, Threshavali did not send Malachize back to his ship. She kept him in the meeting chamber with water and what her food synthesizers could produce that was metabolically neutral for humans, and she read. Her senior staff read with her. No one spoke for a long time. The transcripts were not what she had expected. She had expected to find evidence of a calculated gambit, some strategic sophistication underlying the apparent madness of sending one ship. She had expected humans. What she found instead was something that her framework had no category for. In those 11 days, the council had not been calculating. They had been asterisk arguing. The transcripts showed voices overlapping, positions changing, people contradicting their own earlier statements as new information arrived. 47 proposals, not 47 different asterisk types of response, but 47 specific, detailed proposals from 47 different individuals, each of whom had a different answer to the same question. What do you do when something this size shows up outside everything you love? Some proposals were military, some were diplomatic, some were, in the council's own words, neither of those things, and we don't have a word for what they are. One council member had proposed doing nothing, simply going about regular activity, and letting the Dominion make the next move. Another had proposed immediate unconditional surrender and spent 40 minutes explaining, in careful detail, why this was the most rational available option. The council had listened to both proposals with evident seriousness. Then they had voted on the 48th proposal, which was Malachize's mission, and the vote had not been unanimous. The dissenting votes were documented, along with the specific reasons for dissent. 3 council members had voted against the plan not because they thought it wouldn't work, but because they believed it wasn't asterisk right to ask one person to take this risk, and they wanted their objection on record even though they knew the record might not survive the next several days. They had put that in the file, deliberately, the objection and the reason for it preserved in data they were handing to the Dominion. Threshavali read that section 3 times. They argued, she said finally, setting down the reader, for 9 days about what was right. Malachize, sitting across from her with his 3rd cup of whatever the synthesizer had produced, said, "We usually do. And then they sent you, alone. They sent the asterisk covenant alone," he said, with a precision that was not defensive. "I brought a crew of 68. I want to make sure you have that number." 68. She had 412 ships, crews averaging 300 personnel each. She was looking at a man who had flown a 31-year-old frigate into the center of that formation with 68 people, and she was only now beginning to understand that this was not the desperate act of a civilization out of options. "You had other options," she said. "Yes," You could have surrendered. Yes. You could have attempted to evacuate. Parts of us could have, not all. He set down his cup. You want to know why we didn't? It was not entirely a question. She answered it anyway. Yes. Malachize was quiet for a moment. Not the silence of someone choosing words carefully. The silence of someone who has already chosen the words and is deciding whether the other person is ready to hear them. You're not the first fleet that's shown up outside Earth, he said. You know that, right? You had to know that before you got here. She had known it. The Dominion had reviewed Earth's contact history before committing to this action. 3 previous first contact events with military dimensions, all resolved. Some resolved badly for both parties, but resolved. We were aware. Then you know we've had this conversation before, he said. Maybe not this exact conversation, but something like it. Someone very large showing up and explaining with numbers why we should stop existing. He looked at her steadily. We're still here. The room was very quiet. The crews that flew those missions, he continued. Some of them didn't come back, and before they left, every single time, there were people who said it wasn't worth it, that the cost was too high. That rational calculation of survival probability meant we should make different choices. But you didn't. We listened to them, he said. We thought very hard about whether they were right, and then we flew the missions anyway. He paused. Not because we don't value life. We value it enormously. That's why we flew the missions. HFY wanted to say that this didn't make sense. Her translator offered several synonyms for irrational, and she discarded all of them because she was beginning to suspect they were the wrong category. The chip, she said, the transcript, there were dissenting votes. Yes. People who believed this was wrong. Yes. And they gave you the chip anyway, dissent included. They wanted you to know, he said simply, that we don't all agree, that we argue, that we think about whether we're right, that the people who thought this was wrong cared enough to put their names on it even when the alternative was. He stopped. Something moved across his face. They wanted you to know that we're trying. That's all. That even when we do something that looks like it doesn't make sense, we're trying to be careful, we're trying to be right. HFY sat with that for a long time. Then she picked up her communicator and did something no Dominion Supreme Commander had done in 600 years of recorded military history. She called a full formation standdown. The order went out at 1803 Standard. Vale Soren, watching the archive recording of the tactical display, sees the moment 412 weapon locks release simultaneously. Sees the formation begin to decompress, the ships pulling back from siege configuration, and he still cannot fully explain what he is feeling. What happened next took 3 more days and is documented in 67 hours of negotiation records that Vale Soren has read twice and will read again. What he knows is this. The Dominion came to Saul's system with overwhelming force and a specific objective, and they left with neither the objective accomplished nor the force deployed. What they left with instead is harder to name. There is a document in the Dominion High Council archive, classified at the highest level, but Vale Soren has clearance, that contains HFY's formal after-action report. It is 62 pages long. The last paragraph reads, I came to this system believing that force is the clearest language available to civilizations that do not share a history. I leave believing that I have encountered a species for which this principle does not apply. Not because they are stronger, not because their technology exceeds ours, but because they have developed, over whatever history produced them, a specific and apparently voluntary relationship with loss that I do not have a framework to model. They are willing to absorb costs that would cause any rational civilization to revise its position. They do not appear to experience this willingness as suffering. They experience it as purpose. I am not prepared to argue that they are right to feel this way. I am no longer prepared to argue that they are wrong. Vale Soren reads this paragraph. He has read it many times, each time. It means something slightly different, and he cannot tell if that is because the paragraph changes or because he does. There is one more piece of the archive that he returns to. It is not a tactical record or a negotiation transcript or a strategic analysis. It is a personal log entry, CO Jaiwan's, dated the night the Asterisk Covenant returned to Earth dock. It was included in the data package Malachize submitted to Fleet Command, which was standard procedure. It is 13 lines long. He knew we weren't coming back. I don't know when I understood that. Sometime between the 37th weapons lock and reaching the consensus, I think. He knew the math. He'd known it since the council called him. I've been trying to figure out what you call someone who knows the math and goes anyway. When I came off shift and found him on the observation deck at 200, looking back at where the formation had been, I asked him. I said, "What did you actually think was going to happen?" And he thought about it for a long time, long enough that I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, "I thought if we showed them exactly what we are, not our weapons, not our fleet, just ourselves, they'd have to decide whether we were worth destroying." I asked him if he'd been sure that would work. He said no. I asked him why he went anyway. He said, because someone had to show them we'd go anyway. I've been trying to figure out what you call someone who knows the math and goes anyway. I think the word might just be human. Vale Soren closes the archive. Outside his office window, the lights of the Dominion's diplomatic quarter burn in the slow, steady rhythms of an institution that has been here for 1,000 years and expects to be here for 1,000 more. He has spent his career building models of other species, charts of behavior, matrices of decision-making, taxonomies of motive. He is very good at it. He opens a new file, types a title, Human Behavioral Framework Revised. He stares at the blank document for a long time. Then he types one line. They are not irrational. They have a different variable in the equation, one that most species removed from the calculation long ago because it was too expensive to carry. He thinks about the laugh at the start of the recording, the one he couldn't classify, the one that fell into a gap in the taxonomy between every known category. He types a second line. The variable is not hope. It is not courage. It is not sacrifice exactly, though sacrifice is part of it. He stops typing. He thinks about Malachize on that observation deck at 200, looking back at the place where 400 ships had been. He thinks about 68 people on a 31-year-old ship crossing into the center of a compression formation. He thinks about council members putting their dissent on record in a file they planned to hand to the enemy, because they thought it mattered that the enemy knew they had disagreed. He thinks about the word asterisk trying. He finishes the sentence. The variable is that they have decided as a species that the moment you stop being willing to lose everything for something worth having, that is the moment you have already lost it. They carry this decision the way other species carry organs, not consciously, not as philosophy, but as function, as biology. It is not what they believe. It is what they are. He saves the file. He does not know if it's right. He does not know if any framework he builds will ever be right, because every time he thinks he has found the edge of what humans are capable of, he finds instead that he has found only the edge of what he was capable of imagining. The recording still runs on his secondary screen. The audio is looping. He hasn't turned it off. The human's voice, for the 1,000th time, speaks into the silence of a room filled with things Vale Soren thought he understood. Doesn't matter how many of them there are. And then the laugh. Low, almost appreciative. Like a man who has done the math and lost, and decided to go anyway. And found, somewhere in that decision, something that feels, if not like victory, then like something older and stranger and more permanent than victory. Something that 412 ships, for all their mass and firepower and perfect formation, had